everybody, it's Paige Evans and I have a new process video to share with you. This is featuring my new favorite cut file called Flower Ampersand, available in the Silhouette store and my Etsy shop. I can leave a link to it below. This layout started with several different ideas. First, I die cut it from this yellow pattern paper and I thought about backing it with pattern papers. And then I decided to use it as a template to place the pieces. So what I did is I copied and pasted the cut file into a new studio document, and then I ungrouped it and grouped all the little sections of flowers together and arranged them in 2 by 2 inch squares. Or I guess these are 1 by 1 inch squares, but I placed them 2 by 2. So I turned on the grid and I just started placing the groups of flowers into, those 2-inch squares. And these become the groups that are going to be cut from different pattern papers. So I'm just dragging, dropping, and then the next step will be cutting the 2-inch squares from pattern papers. I'm going to use my Pick Me Up collection with pink paisley. It has lots of blues, yellows, pinks, reds, and purples. If it didn't fit in the 2-inch square, I rotated a bit, and then it did fit. Alright, so here's the pattern papers that I've chosen, and I'm just going to trim them into 2-inch squares. The ombre papers, I would cut a few because it's got the different shades of colors, from the darker to the light, and I cut about 2 pieces from every pattern paper, more if there were more colors, and also from paper number 10, it's perfect because it has 2-inch squares of patterns already. But I was particular about the colors I wanted to use. I only wanted to use solids. So this blue, this yellow, this light pink, and the reds. So I just picked patterns and colors from that paper number 10. Here's my piles of pattern papers. Good to go. I have placed them on the mat where I wanted that shape to be cut from that certain pattern paper. So here I'm back in my studio document. You can see all of the shapes have been placed in those 2-inch squares. Send it to the Cameo, and a few minutes later it is finished and all cut out. Alright, so here's what the mat looks like. I've peeled off one of the papers and I'm going to trim this yellow pattern paper down a little bit so that it will more easily fit onto a cream cardstock background using washi tape to hold it in place, again to use as the template. So here's the cream cardstock that I'm using. It's textured cardstock from American Crafts. I'm going to pull out a roll of washi tape that I have nearby and going to attach it to the cardstock in a few different places along the left and right edge. And so at first I thought I was just going to glue all the pieces back in place using liquid adhesive, and I went about doing this for a good 10-15 minutes or so. I would place the glue right inside the shape and then put the pieces back in their spots one by one. So here comes this intricate leaf, using the liquid glue to dab it along the center line and place it back in the spot where it belongs. So I knew this was going to take some time, but I knew the results would be worth it, so I was up for the task, up for the challenge. And then I decided I need more dimension in my life. So here's what the mat looks like once I've peeled off the outer layers of the shapes of the flowers and the leaves, and I love how they look all colorful on the sticky mat. Okay, so yeah, I need more dimension in my life, and some of these shapes had already set, they'd already dried, but I tried to peel them off as best as I could, and then decided to add them back in place using dimensional adhesive. It's an extra added step, but it's definitely worth the dimension that it creates. Otherwise, it's just too flat, you know? So I yeah, I got crazy, peeled everything off, and then put the dimensional adhesive inside the spots. I figured it would be faster to just put all the dimensional adhesive down. I thought about peeling the backs off all at once, but then it was kind of too sticky, so I didn't peel off the backings until I was ready to put that certain shape in place. So, yeah, loving the dimension this creates, and just, again, peeling the pieces off one by one, putting them in place. Not all of, I didn't use dimensional adhesive on all of the pieces. Some of the teeny tiny dots, some of the teeny tiny flowers were just too small to put dimensional adhesive. So in this case, you can see right now, I'm adding little dots of glue, of liquid glue, and putting the flowers in place. And I like how this looks with some of the shapes raised up with the dimensional adhesive, and some of them are just flat against the background. So I finished that round of flowers and petals, and I still had some left over, and these were larger, so I had to custom trim the pattern papers to fit in these spaces, using the grid as a reference compared to the grid on the sticky mat. I did pull in some browns for the branches, and here I am putting the last leaf in place. So this took a few hours, worth it, and then it was time to see the results. So I carefully peeled off the washi tape, and then carefully peel off. You need to take your time while you're doing this. I did end up peeling off some of the shapes that were stuck down with liquid glue. It just seeped under the edges, and they just peeled off with the background. But slow and steady, just try and make sure the shapes go through their cutout shapes and they stay on the background. Use your fingers to poke and prod. I even brought in a piercing needle to help some of the shapes fit through their holes. I tore this background. I guess I'm not going to use it for another project. Sorry, I didn't tear the background. I tore the template. And it wasn't a huge ta-da moment because I saw all of the mistakes and things weren't peeled off correctly or had gotten peeled off all the way. But it was about 9 o'clock at night at this point. It was time to go to bed, so I left things as they are at this point. And yeah, in the next screen, this is a brand new morning, a fresh day. I've had some sleep, so I am putting the pieces that got taken off or peeled off back in place. So just a few fixes. Using the liquid glue does that, tears things off a little bit, but it's okay. It was only a few missing pieces, and I added them back in place, and there we go. Got the ta-da moment. I love how this looks with the colorful flowers, the spacing in between to give some breathing room, and again, the dimension that's created using the foam adhesive. So I found a pair of photos of my daughter Jane and our little bunny Phoebe. So that is going to be the title, Jane and Phoebe. I'm using both kinds of thickers from my Pick Me Up collection with pink paisley. The Ampersand is from the chipboard thickers. Jane and Phoebe are from the mini foam thickers, comes with white and royal blue. I'm trimming this cardstock sticker to create this kind of scalloped frame above the title just to draw more attention to it. And I placed it in one of the open spots of the Ampersand. And now to help draw more attention to the photos, I'm using a piece of scalloped gold washi tape found in the washi tape book. The photo was hanging off the edge a little bit, so I just trimmed off the excess and decided to write my journaling above the photos, first using a pencil and then going back over it with a dark blue pen to match the dark blues in this collection. Once I was finished with the journaling, I went back with an eraser and erased the pencil marks that were still showing. The layout still didn't feel finished to me, so what do? Well, I'm going to add some stitching, both machine stitching and hand stitching. So I stitched through the thickers. Gets a little gummed up on the foam thickers, but I think it works better to go as fast as you can through the foam. Had no problem going through the chipboard Ampersand. And I like how the floral Ampersand chipboard sticker reflects or mirrors the flower Ampersand that is the focal point. So I'm trimming the thread ends. Sometimes I leave them long. This time I'm trimming them up so it's a little bit cleaner of a look. And then yeah, again, at this point, I'm just like, well, when do I call it good? When is this layout finished? Well, it still didn't feel finished, so I'm coming in with some white acrylic paint splatters using a paintbrush, and I'm just diluting the paint a little bit with some water to help make it splash better. Did the small drops first with the flicking motion, and now I'm coming in squeezing in the tip of the brush to make the bigger drops, but they kind of stood out a little bit too much, so I dabbed them up with a paper towel. Decided to add a little bow puffy sticker in between the photos. And here, I promise, is the last step, and this is adding hand stitching. And so I didn't want to just eyeball it. I wanted it to be a little more perfect. I don't like using that word though, but I wanted it to be neater and cleaner. So I measured a 1/4 inch in from the top and bottom and drew a connecting line between using a pencil and just doing a light line. I knew I was going to come in and erase it. Do that to all 4 sides, and then coming in with the ruler again, I flipped it over to do centimeters, and I pierced a hole every, oh, it's not a 1/4 inch, but every like 10 millimeters or so, just so they were pretty close together. And erased the pencil marks, the pencil lines, because I wanted to do, I'm not exactly sure what this kind of stitch is called. It's like you skip every other one. And I'm using variegated thread, so it's got dark blues and light blues, and I love how it totally matches the layout. I used dark blues and light blues, and so with this stitch, I skipped, I didn't do a back stitch. I left a gap in between each one, and I really like how that mirrors the gaps in between the flowers. So there's the white space in between all the flowers, and now there's the white space between all of the stitches, and I thought that just complements the design well. All right, that's it. Whew! It was a really fun layout to make. I love this cut file. I'll leave a link to it, and I hope you are inspired to give it a try. Thanks so much.